My name is Adam Russell. I'm from a social game company called Social Games. With the recent success that Double Fine has had with Kickstarter, do you think we'll see a number of more established studios using a crowdfunding technique to source money for games? And do you think that this will have an impact on new indie studios?
So yeah, hot topic at the moment, Kickstarter, which I think today went past the $2 million mark, and it's got over 50,000 individual backers. Actually, so let's start with you, Jo, because you've been doing, UKIE obviously have just commissioned some research in this area.
It's such an exciting area. So yeah, we just released a report last week, at the end of last week. Dan in the audience has some copies if you want to have a look, and it's available online. Because we were looking at this for some time, and it was lucky happenstance. Obviously, we'd known about some other examples, like Six to Start's game from British companies who'd managed to raise funds. But this was just an incredible record that was broken for Double Fine. And it showed that, that when there's a fan base that already exists around a property, and when there's a real passion amongst gamers who, on the whole, are fans of what they play, then there's a real chance to harness that into new business models, into new ways of accessing money for companies, and particularly for smaller and independent developers. And so we had been looking at this. We know the government's interested in this. So it forms part of this report, forms part of our key ask for the government in terms of the pre-budget submission, because it really is just about making very, very minor tweaks to existing legislation to actually open up the potential of crowdfunding, so that, for example, you could get a share of the profits if you want to. Now, I'm not saying that people will want to do that, but just making it so much easier for anybody, in any industry, in fact, to use crowdfunding platforms without the legislative barriers in order to get the money that they need to make the games that they want.
Jason, it's an amazing story what's happening with Tim Schafer's company, but is this, on that scale, is that a one-off, or are we kind of seeing this as kind of like what Radiohead did within Rainbows? It's kind of one person's going to do it and no one else can quite repeat that in the same way. Do you think it will be a trend?
Well, I guess there's one of these things works and it works well, then that's great. Hopefully it can be repeated, but effectively it's the democratization of investment in creative products, and that's quite exciting. I mean, the legislation thing, well, that's just talking about the UK, and let's face it, the UK is only a small part of the industry, and we're talking about this democratization across the whole world. So quite frankly, if you've got fans in Mongolia or fans in Serbia or fans in the UK, that's great that they can actually contribute to getting something they want to see made. And I think long may it kind of expand and grow. There are issues over ownership, there are issues over who owns what, and there are issues over what if you don't actually deliver, what happens to the money. So whilst it's a very exciting area, and I think it's being looked at in other areas, and hopefully it will expand, it's not necessarily the sort of the golden goose that's going to save everybody's sort of funding problems. But I certainly think it's a very exciting area.
Mark, do you agree with that?
I completely agree.
Thank you.
Nice to know, I played my part. Do I think you'll see it from big studios? No. I think it terrifies them. Will it work for everyone? No. Because I think you have to, like Radiohead or Double Fine, you need to have something that's already there and known to drive the community, or a proven team who's done something cool before, and people say, hey, let's give it another go again. But I think it's incredibly exciting. I think it could be another thing that really helps indie studios get off the ground. I'm really excited about it, and would personally wholeheartedly endorse it. But how pervasive it becomes, I think, really is down to the guys making the games. And yeah.
David, how about a crowdsourced elite?
Well, yes, I think it would be great. I mean, there's a lot of complexity here, which I think people have alluded to. And one of the things behind Joe's point is there are queries as to whether it falls under the authorities of the FSA and various other issues. But clearly, there's the Hotel Chocolat case. This is not just in our industry this has happened, where people were paid in chocolate, basically, or funded in a different way. And I think it is fascinating. In terms of whether it's effective for big studios, I think actually, if you think of it, investment is crowdsourcing of money anyway. It's just it has to be regulated by the FSA. So I think there are some very interesting questions of where this goes in the future. And actually, we hopefully can finally make the games that we all want to make, as well as the ones that bigger business wants us to make. I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity, and hats off to Tim Schafer and to the the whole, I forgot what it's called, Kickstarter initiative, because I think that's fantastic.
As developers, are you excited for them, or there's also slightly thinking, you swines, I wish we'd done that?
Well, we'd already thought of doing something along those lines, interestingly. I think there are a lot of interesting opportunities, but what you've also got to look at it is, you know, that when you go for a project, you don't know with it's the same with the publisher, of course, whether the commitment's going to be there. So I think this is a great thing to do up front. I mean, let's face it, we're already crowdsourced the funding of games because people pay for them. It's just a case of a prepayment like pre-orders.
Exactly. I mean, I think, you know, getting to a prototype stage or getting to a stage where then you can attract investment is another way to look at it. You know, it's another sort of tool in your armory, if that's the right expression, to use. And it's not a new idea. You know, the Statue of Liberty was crowdfunded. It's just the technology has made it possible to make it a lot easier and, as you say, democratise it at a global scale.
Has anyone in the audience got anything they want to ask or make any points about Kickstarter at all? The lady down there.
Hello, my name is Sarah Lemarier. I'm from Sony Computer Entertainment. One of the questions I'd have about this is a huge part of the emphasis in Tim Schafer's video is that they're going to show you how a game is made. They're going to take you behind the scenes. And how much do you think that's been a vital part of the success that it's had?
So yes, bringing the fans into the process more, demystifying the process, making them feel a bit more part of the creator's process. I mean, Mark, can you see the sort of appeal of that?
I certainly can. I mean, I think there's an innate kind of voyeurism in all of us. That's probably why Facebook and other things are successful too. So I think I can see that appealing. I think very quickly, though, when everyone does it, it loses its novelty. And I think it'll go full circle and come back to making games. But yeah, no, I think right now there's a huge appeal. Any kind of limited access to or restricted access to any part of life is compelling.
I think also that, just as you say, you know, it's like the making of videos on DVDs. The first few DVDs that had them actually sold more, and they thought, oh wow, these making ofs are great. But actually, very quickly, you didn't bother watching them because they were all very similar. I think there's another problem, though, which people haven't really mentioned, which is everyone at their heart is to some degree a game designer and really wants this way or that way. I just imagine the nightmare when there's some way in. Everyone saying, no, do it this way. And there'll be other camps, so there'll be forums saying, pulling them any which way. And actually, to be honest, doing it some way rather than no way is better. So I think that there are potentially issues down the line with that.
And I think that worked because, again, it's down to this committed fan base. You know, in any media production, you know, when I was at BBC and Channel 4, we used to talk about, let's do behind-the-scenes video of the making of, whatever it would be. And it would be dull as ditchwater. Is it ditchwater or dishwater? I never know. But unless it was something that already was, you had passionate fans. So Being Human, Doctor Who, Top Gear, that's the thing that already has this committed fan base. And it's paying, it's almost like this social contract and paying back fan loyalty by opening up the gubbins a bit and letting them in and trusting them. So it doesn't work for everything.
Well, on that note, Jason, I mean, I'm sure publishers would hate, because publishers love to kind of control you know, the release of information and what gets shared at what time, so the game looks at its best possible state, and there's this whole sort of PR plan that lasts for years. As a sort of content creator, would you feel confident in being that open, or are there certain things as the process goes on that you wouldn't necessarily want to show people?
I think as a creative person, I think you have to be careful about sort of asking other people, and not. I think you have to be. You want to listen to other people's opinions, and you want to absorb them, and you want to process them. But also, they are, at the end of the day, paying you to be the professional, to kind of add that special thing. And sometimes, when you're in design meetings or whatever, people have differences of opinions. One of the things I often have to do is make the decision which way you're deciding to go. And you will get some people upset because they think that's wrong. So I can imagine sort of multiplying that by 100,000-fold, and maybe 40,000 people think you're completely wrong, and 60,000 people think you're right, and you know that's how wars start. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not expecting anybody to actually have fisticuffs over a game, but people are very passionate about products.
Really?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But people do get very passionate about how they see their game working, and quite frankly, I'm a big games player as well as a games maker, and sometimes when people do a sequel and they've spoiled the thing that you loved, and you think, well, was it the first time of kind of an happy accident? Am I missing the point? So I think you're going to enthuse people and add them to the creative force, but I think also as professionals we have to extract the value out of that, but not necessarily have it crowd designed.
Certainly. Something you want to add, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a very powerful point there. There's clearly, with anything that's kind of user-generated content, there's a form of self-ownership, you know, and that's why games like Minecraft or whatever go as crazy as they do, because anything I create, obviously I think it's awesome because I made it, so I want to show everyone else, and it's a human trait. So I think you get stickiness. I think you get a lot of things by having the community involved. But equally, I've never seen a good game that's been designed by a committee. You know, I think it has to have a certain vision. It has to have a certain direction, passion, whatever you want to call it, that makes it great. And you can't democratize that, you know, to 1 million people. It just,
So you can crowdsource the funding, but not crowdsource the actual development of the game.
Well, it might be an interesting
I think you have
experiment.
input,
You know,
but I don't think you can
Yeah.
defer it to everyone else to make decisions for you.
probably the first time in the media where we've actually had the opportunity to do something like, you know, crowd designed, and it'd be interesting as an experiment on, you know, in some of the more open platforms to actually see what happened. And we could test it out, you know, we could try it, but I don't know anybody that's necessarily brave enough to do that.